My parents laughed so hard they almost cried when I bought Grandpa's old bee farm. They said, "Stella, you've lost your mind. No one makes money from bees." Mom even joked that I'd end up selling honey jars on the roadside. Dad told everyone at dinner how his failed daughter just wasted her savings on useless buzzing insects. If you've ever been underestimated or mocked for following your dreams, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This story will hit your heart hard. That night, I cried quietly in my old room, staring at the worn-out deed in my hands. Grandpa's bee farm wasn't just land, it was all I had left of him. He used to tell me, "The sweetest success always comes after the hardest sting." Those words haunted me as I stood in the middle of the broken hives, surrounded by silence and weeds. Everyone saw failure. I saw potential. So, I disappeared from family gatherings, ignored their calls, and started rebuilding everything. I spent nights learning about bees, production, and organic honey branding. Every drop of sweat felt like a silent promise. One day, they'd regret every laugh. A year later, when the first order came from a luxury brand in New York, I smiled. But I didn't tell anyone, not yet. I wanted them to see it themselves, on their own screens, in the most unexpected way possible. Because soon, the same family that mocked me would be fighting to buy a piece of what they once called a useless farm. When my parents saw my name trending online, they froze. The same useless bee farm they mocked had just been featured in Forbes under the headline, "Meet the Girl Who Turned Bees into Gold." Mom's jaw literally dropped. Dad whispered, "That's our Stella?" Suddenly my phone exploded with calls and texts. I didn't answer, not yet. They needed to feel it. The sting of underestimating me. Months before that day, things weren't so shiny. I nearly lost everything. The honey yield was too low. Suppliers bailed. And one night a storm destroyed half the hives. I sat there in the mud, rain mixing with tears, thinking maybe they were right about me. But then I remembered Grandpa's last letter, tucked inside an old box. "When the world doubts you, let your work speak." That night, I made a decision. If no one believed in me, I'd make the world listen. I built my own website, branded it Golden Sting, and shared videos showing raw, natural honey dripping from fresh combs. One clip went viral, 3 million views overnight. Orders flooded in from across the country. Luxury hotels, skincare brands, health influencers, all wanted my honey. And just when I started getting recognition, Mom called me after a year of silence, her voice shaking. "Stella, your dad and we saw your article. We want to talk about investing." I smiled at the buzzing hives around me and whispered, "Now you want a taste of the sweetness you once mocked." Because this time I wasn't the same Stella who cried in her room. This time, I held all the power, and I wasn't done yet. I still remember that moment like a movie. The family dinner I wasn't even invited to. But I showed up anyway, dressed in a simple white dress, calm as ever, while they whispered under their breath. The same relatives who once laughed at my bee madness now faked polite smiles. My cousin Lily, the one who used to call me Queen of Useless Bees, looked me up and down with that same smug grin. "Wow, Stella," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You finally left your little farm? Or did the bees throw you out?" The table erupted in laughter. Even Mom forced a smile, pretending she wasn't part of the same cruelty a year ago. I wanted to say something sharp, but I just sat down quietly. I let them talk. Let them believe I was still the same girl they once mocked, the girl who cried after being called a failure. They didn't know that my company had just signed $1 million contract that morning. Dad cleared his throat. "You know, Stella," he said, tapping his wine glass, "your mom and I were discussing something. We think maybe you should let us manage that little bee thing of yours. We can turn it into a family business. You clearly need help with the real stuff." The way he said help, like I was helpless, it burned. But I smiled and said softly, "Oh, really? You want to invest in the bee farm now?" He chuckled. "Of course, sweetheart. But let's be real, it's not an investment. It's charity." My hand tightened around the glass. I could hear the buzzing in my head, like my bees calling me to strike. I stood up slowly, took out my phone and placed it on the table. "I think you all might want to see this," I said, tapping play on a video. The projector behind me lit up, a clip from a business news channel. The host's voice echoed through the room. Golden Sting Honey, founded by Stella Brooks, has just been valued at $18.4 million after a major partnership with Lux Organics. The entire room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Dad's smile vanished. Mom's wineglass froze midair. Lily's eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. I looked around the table and said, "So tell me again, who needs help?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dad stammered, "Wait, that's your company? You own Golden Sting?" I nodded. Every drop of it. The same people who mocked me for chasing bees were now begging for a piece of the honey. But the best part? I hadn't even told them the biggest secret yet, because behind that company was something even they couldn't imagine. Dad's face turned pale as I leaned forward, my voice steady but sharp. "You remember Grandpa's will, right? The one you called worthless land with buzzing pests?" Dad frowned. "Yeah, the bee farm deed. Why?" I smiled. "That worthless land came with more than bees. It came with the mineral rights under it. Grandpa never told anyone, but his land sits on a rare mineral deposit. The same company that just invested in Golden Sting, they also bought exclusive extraction rights from me." The room exploded in whispers. My uncle choked on his drink. Lily gasped. "Wait, you're saying you're rich because of dirt?" I laughed softly. "No, Lily. I'm rich because I believed in what you all called dirt." Mom tried to speak, but her voice trembled. "Stella, honey, you should have told us. We could have—" "Stopped me?" I cut in. "Like you did when I wanted to study agriculture. When you called my dreams stupid?" My tone was calm, but the fire in my chest was burning. "You didn't believe in me then. You don't get to profit from me now." Dad clenched his fists. "We're your parents, Stella. We deserve a share—" "Deserve?" I repeated. "You deserve credit for the laughs, the humiliation, the doubt. That's what built me." The silence that followed was heavy. Even the waiter stopped moving. I stood up, collected my purse, and turned toward the exit. As I reached the door, I looked back one last time. "You know, Dad, Grandpa always said bees protect what's theirs. They don't attack unless provoked. But once they do—" I paused, giving a faint smile. "They never miss." Then I left them there, shocked, speechless, drowning in regret. Outside, my car was waiting. As I drove past the farm's golden fields, the sunset glimmered off the honey jars in the back seat, each one labeled Golden Sting. My life's sting had finally turned into gold. But as my phone buzzed with a new message, my smile faded. The text read, "We need to talk. It's about Grandpa's lawyer." And just like that, the sweetness started to taste strange. The next morning, I met Grandpa's old lawyer, Mr. Harlan, in his dusty office. He looked nervous, shuffling through papers like he was hiding something. "Stella," he said quietly, "there's something your grandfather never told anyone." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "I already have the deed, the mineral rights, everything," he sighed. "That's the thing. You don't. The land title your father gave up years ago. It wasn't just his decision. Your grandfather tricked him into signing it. He wanted to test which of you had real vision, real courage. He left a clause in his will, a clause that activates only after 1 year. I frowned. "A clause?" He nodded. "Whoever restored the bee farm successfully and turned it profitable within a year would inherit not just the land, but the entire trust fund, worth over $50 million. I froze. "Wait, Grandpa had a trust fund?" Mr. Harlan smiled faintly. He did, hidden behind a false company name, Buzzworth Holdings. "And Stella, it's yours now." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The buzzing in my ears wasn't bees. It was the sound of every insult, every laugh, every "you can't do it" crashing down. I had won, completely. But just then, my phone rang. "Mom." I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was trembling. "Stella, your dad's in the hospital. Heart attack." He saw the news about the inheritance. My heart dropped. I didn't know whether to feel pity, anger, or victory. After a long pause, I said softly, "Tell him. The bees forgive him, but I don't." That night I walked through the glowing fields, the soft hum of bees surrounding me. Grandpa's words echoed in my head. The sweetest success comes after the hardest sting. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "You were right, Grandpa." They all laughed, but in the end, the sting was mine. The camera zooms out, endless golden fields, the sound of bees rising like thunder, and Stella standing tall in the middle of her empire, calm, powerful, unstoppable. Morale: never underestimate the quiet one. Sometimes the person you laugh at today will own everything you dream of tomorrow.